Item 12, public hearing, master development plan amendment, Yountville Inn expansion and affordable housing project. Do we have a staff report?
Mayor, before you begin, I have to recuse myself because the residence was within 500 feet of this particular project.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that Councilmember Dutton is stepping down from the dais. Where'd the clerk go? Check on the TV. Are you giving the staff report,
Yes.
Sandra? Thank you.
The item before you is an amendment to the master development plan and the development agreement for the affordable housing component of the Yountville Inn project. And you've seen this project before, and it was presented to you as two components bundled together. That included the relocation and resizing of 3 affordable housing units, and that's the item before you tonight. It has been separated from the modifications to the farmhouse, which are not before you tonight. Those were pulled from the agenda to provide time for an historian to review the historic significance of the farmhouse, and any future requests to modify the farmhouse will come back before you after the conclusions of the historian are made available. So the request tonight consists of the relocation of 2 units from the first floor of the farmhouse to Building 2. And Building 2, in that upper left-hand corner, is currently a partially 1-story building. These changes would make the building fully 2-story on both the north and south ends. And it would be like buildings 1 and 3 that are currently 2-story buildings. The 3rd unit in the farmhouse will remain on the 2nd floor. The request also includes the resizing of the 3 affordable housing units from 3 studios to 2 1-bedrooms and 1 2-bedroom. On September 8th, the item was before the ZDRB for review and comment, and there was discussion on the unit size and the impact of the change in size on affordable rent. One member disliked the long run of the stairwell blocking the window and the blank south elevation, but staff doesn't share these concerns because there's a separation of the stairwell from the building so that it's not flush against the window, and the south elevation, if it were to have windows, would look directly into the windows of the unit that is just 6 feet south of that in building number 3. One member was concerned that the tenants wouldn't maintain the property, although staff feels this impact is mitigated since the ownership is the same as the inn and they have an interest in having a presentable property adjacent to their upgraded inn. The project was analyzed for conformance with the zoning and design ordinance standards, and it conforms in all respects to lot area, building height, setbacks, and open space, affordable housing, floor area ratio, and parking. But even given this conformance, there are 2 issues that deserve extra attention, and that is the height and the massing and the affordable housing. As I mentioned, this will become an entirely 2-story structure, and it would be in close proximity to the entrance to Gateway and the residences on the other side of the creek. And the project does meet the minimum setback requirements from the center line of Creek and from Champaign Drive, and it would be consistent with the other 2-story structures on the property, but it has the potential of impacting privacy and enjoyment of the resident closest to the project on the other side of the creek. The creek vegetation has been cleared and thinned along the bank as part of the started construction of this project, and that eliminates a buffer that had existed. So staff is recommending a condition that the final landscape plan include riparian trees and shrubs that are intended to create more privacy and act as a buffer. The other issue is the affordable housing, and there has been a change in the distribution of unit size. So there are 17 1-bedroom units, 7 2-bedroom units, and 1 3-bedroom units. And this includes a change in the unit size itself. The studios were approximately 350 square feet. The 1-bedrooms would now be approximately 540 square feet, and the 2-bedroom would be approximately 775 square feet. The project does meet the town's inclusionary ordinance standards and requirements that call for a range in unit sizes, and the provision that no more than 25 of the units may be studios, and with the elimination of the 3 studios, that requirement is met entirely. There's also a requirement that at least 20% of the units be greater than 1 bedroom, and here we have 32% in the 2 and 3 bedroom units. There's a requirement that the units be evenly divided among the income categories, and here we have 8 very low, 8 low, and 9 moderate income units to meet this standard. But the inevitable result of the larger unit sizes means that the rents will be higher, and this is based on the additional square footage from the studios to the 1 and 2 bedrooms, and also from the increased occupancy levels that are presumed. A studio generally accommodates 1 person, while a 1 bedroom accommodates 2, and a 2 bedroom accommodates 3 people. In any event, staff supports the project and recommends approval of the amended master development plan and development agreement.
Thank you. Any questions for staff at this time? Councilmember Chilton?
Sandra, Mike, you were going through all those different metrics there. Is there anything that changes this plan to be, shall I call it, more out of compliance with any of those standards? I didn't hear any.
No.
The concern has to do with there was one is aesthetic and the other is impact on neighbors outside of those. Is that a fair statement?
Well, correct as to both of those, and it meets all the inclusionary standards, but the main point is that these affordable units, the 3 studios, will now be more expensive as larger units.
Okay.
And they may meet a different need for larger families rather than something very affordable for a single person.
Single person. Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions? Vice Mayor?
Yes, one is it pertains to the balconies proposed on these new units. So looking at the Unit 2 second floor plan, what's now being proposed are 2 additional balconies facing east, correct?
Yes.
And the one to the most south, the apartment G, in the southeast corner, appears to be the most significant balcony.
That is a 3-bedroom unit, yes. Or no, I'm sorry, that's a 2-bedroom unit.
2-bedroom, right. So are you, staff is stating that with the mitigation with trees, you feel like there's sufficient barrier for privacy and security to the Gateway residents immediately to the east of not only those units, but now we're talking about 4 open balconies. Do you think
Yes.
that would be sufficient?
Well, and keep in mind it's setback 35 to center line of creek, and then there's an additional setback to the units on the other side of the creek. And yes, we feel with some denser native landscaping that it would mitigate that impact.
What is your thought on elimination of those balconies if that condition is deemed too intrusive?
I think that would be negative for those units. These are apartments, and a small amount of open space is beneficial to those residents. And space that's directly adjacent to their unit that they can use that's privately theirs rather than general open space on the property where they can spend time.
And looking specifically again at apartment G on that south end, that south elevation is completely solid right now, I believe. As you just mentioned, it in the lower rendering there, that faces right up against the adjacent building, correct?
That does, yes.
In your opinion, is there sufficient space if that balcony were to be moved from the east facing to the south wall and be a different design element? You're saying that that then creates a privacy issue with Unit 3? That's a 3?
Well, we do have a 10-foot setback between those 2 buildings. There are windows on the north-facing side of Building 3, which is adjacent to this Building 1.
And are those windows on both first and second floor? What I'm getting at is if that balcony were to be moved to reduce the impact to the east, is there an option to move them to the south side of that building?
There is, in my opinion, that may have a greater impact because there's no buffer between units, where at least along the creek, there's some sort of element to separate the balcony from the living space.
Because then the privacy issue just gets transferred to the people in the adjacent building. Okay. And possibly the applicant, sensing my concern, can maybe address that.
And
Assuming
the
that-
planning director is just noting to me that the balcony on the unit you're referencing is recessed or set back from, pulled in from the
Right.
building edge somewhat.
There's a greater setback from the creek, right? Okay, thank you.
Any more questions for staff? Is the applicant here? Would you like to address some of the concerns of the council?
Good evening, Mayor Saucerman and Council. My name is Joan Terrasa with the Yountville Inn, and we've been here twice before, just not with this item as a separate issue. So I really don't have anything to add pertaining to any changes that have happened in the course of the last 8 weeks or so. The architect is not here, so I really can't speak to the possibilities or the impacts of moving the balcony to the south side, although I'm certain that if that was a condition of approval, that could definitely be taken a look at. And also, as Sandra and Bob had mentioned, the setback on that additional unit is set back quite a bit further from the already approved units in that building. The only other thing that I really have to add is that I had a conversation actually today with one of the Gateway Mobile Home Park residents, Donna Hind, and we talked about some concerns, and our conversations will continue, I'm sure, one of which being the privacy issue along the creek, and Donna's unit and a few of the other members also, or residents of Gateway are here as well, and I'm sure they'll add their comments. As stated in the staff report, where it speaks to a, where it speaks to a condition of approval as far as the landscaping and creating privacy. That is definitely something that we are more than willing to work with the residents on and with town staff. I did speak with the owner regarding those concerns today, and that is something that we would definitely, take part in and work with the residents to make sure that they were able to enjoy their privacy. And I think also on the privacy issue would also be possibly noise issues, things of that nature. And I think as staff has stated, because the ownership is the same with the mobile home park, the housing, and the Yountville Inn, we really will be working together and make sure that this is a cohesive living environment for the enjoyment of both our guests and the residents. Any questions?
Good, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this item this evening?
Donna Hine, 6424 Washington Street, Space 38. I'm here speaking this evening not as a representative of the Gateway Mobile Home Park, but as for myself and the resident who resides next to me. And I will first read a note from her. Excuse me. My name is Tony DeLong. I live at Space 37, Gateway Mobile Home Park. I have lived here for 12 years. My lot is at the perimeter of the park by Hopper Creek. My space used to have several trees in the backyard. When the flood wall was built, most of those trees had to be removed. One large almond tree was left, but it recently fell over and had to be removed at my expense. With the removal of several trees on the other side of Hopper Creek, very little privacy remains in my yard. The two-story workforce housing offers windows and balconies looking onto my backyard as well as my neighbors' yards. I cannot attempt to remedy the situation by planting another tree because our park rules and regulations forbids planting anything tall, Section 3, Part D. In good weather, which is a good part of the year, I spend a lot of my time gardening, entertaining, and just relaxing in my backyard. I am concerned about the lack of privacy and the increased noise because of the workforce housing. I want to say that I'm being consistent in that I have always supported workforce housing, housing for families of lower moderate income. In this instance, when you put the second story on the other building, I will have no sunshine in my backyard at all. I currently enjoy raising and enjoy a quantity of roses which will have to be removed from my yard. I would like to feel comfortable that Mr. Altamira will share the expense of that because of my losing what I had valued at one point as far as my location. I understand that I had to lose a view from my windows, but I still have other views that I have not lost. I am also concerned that on the Hopper Creek side, when the creek was cleared and when the trees were removed in the cleaning process there, and at the time that the wall was built, there were a couple of trees that, due to the wall, I'm sure that the roots were very severely, I don't want to say damaged, compromised may be the better word. When we had the winds the other day, I looked out my window and I thought that the one tree was definitely going to come down. Now, I have in my backyard a joint pole, utility pole, that is shared by PG&E and Comcast. If that tree had come down, we would have been without power. We would have been without Comcast. I have a separate issue with Comcast about how they did some wires, but that's not an issue that you need to be involved in. But I hope that we're able to work with Mr. Altamira, and as far as privacy and trees on the side of the workforce housing, that I understand and that I know has been built into the project, but it's now trees and shrubs that we will require on our side of the housing. So that's my concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else comment on this project this evening? Alrighty, seeing none, I'll close the public comment, bring it back to council for further discussion and or a decision. Bob, what's the maximum building height of the second two-story buildings?
For apartments,
Roof height?
28 feet, I believe it is.
Okay.
And these are not up to that
Oh, they're not even? The roof height peak?
now. Let's see. They're under the requirement. I can.
They're
define
closer
that.
to 20.
Okay, 20 feet. And they're 35 feet from the center line of the creek, and then are the mobile homes, their fence line, or the homes themselves, are they 35 feet from the center line of the creek?
This is the. Let's see if I have this right. This line running through here is center line of creek.
Okay,
And then the flood wall is indicated here, so
okay,
the edge of these homes may be slightly within that, but not by much, probably right at around 35.
okay.
Now, this is the unit we've been discussing, and as you can see, it's recessed in more. So there's a good about 70 feet from this edge here, which is the 35-foot line, and 35 to there, and that's probably a little less than 35. But we're looking at a home that's tucked up, or this unit, the second unit that's tucked into here. As far as the sunlight issue, I don't believe that's going to have a tremendous effect on casting a shadow 70 feet that direction. That they're going to experience a loss of light in the yard.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Councilmember Moeller?
I still think the council got it right in 2006 when they approved the original plan. I just don't see anything, really a need to endorse this amendment. I know we're going to study the farmhouse. Maybe the outcome will be we're going to tear it down and build something like it, or maybe we'll maintain it to some kind of historic level standards. It's going to have 2 affordable units in there regardless, unless there's another alternative. I haven't been able to figure out what that could be yet. So I don't support this. I maintain that the council got it right in 2006 with the original plan.
Thank you. Councilmember Chilton?
My primary consideration when looking at this was twofold. One is what kind of impact does this have on the site as a whole from a use perspective and a visual perspective, and the second is the impact on the neighbors, which I think is probably the most important part of it. I don't have any issue with moving the affordable housing units to this. I think aesthetically it will be fine on the project. I think that the developer has already gone well above and beyond when it comes to fulfilling their affordable housing obligation. And I think that the units are actually an improvement over what was crammed into that farmhouse. So from that perspective, it's good. From the neighbor's perspective, I saw Donna sort of mouthing, "You haven't been in my backyard." I've been at the front of her house, but I haven't been in the back of her house. I think that most of the impact is probably already approved and is going to happen anyway. I do think that having seen what the clearing of that creek has done for privacy, I do think that this is this is a request that the council has at its discretion. I do think that we should take advantage of the situation and require adequate privacy screening because this is even more of an impact than it was before. So I would like to see Sandra and Bob have that written in as a condition of approval. And I think that may be in there already. You referred to it.
If I may, I believe, Councilmember Chilton, you're asking for stronger language, including provision of landscaping
Yes.
in the existing mobile home properties on the east side, as well as landscaping on the westerly border.
That's correct.
So we could make those modifications to the resolution easily enough and work with the applicant and the affected property owners to develop appropriate landscape plans.
And I think considering this is the developer and it's their own rules for the park, they can probably make exceptions to their own rules. And it would make sense in this case to come to a kind of a three-way mutually acceptable solution on the privacy side of it. And if you've got to take one thing out, well, maybe the next thing should be address that privacy issue. So with that one condition, I would support this.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Well, the vast majority of the changes requested, I am comfortable with. There's one great exception, however, and that is these balconies. And for me, that changes the relocation of these 2 units on the second floor from an acceptable to an excessive impact on the Gateway residents. I'm a little disappointed that the architect isn't here to discuss whether there are reasonable options to relocating the balcony. The biggest concern for me is the apartment G balcony, mainly because of its size. And I appreciate the mitigation with the trees, but I think all of us know how light and noise travels in this town. And even with the trees, that could help with the light, but there's no way that's going to stop the noise we're talking about adding to this second floor. So unless I can feel satisfied that we're going to better manage the impact on the residents of the east, I'm okay with the second-story units themselves. I'm not comfortable with the open space balconies outside because of the noise and the light factors. I realized that we had already approved those in the previous 2 units, but looking at the footprint of those balconies, they're substantially smaller. Therefore, not nearly as impactful, I don't think. I mean, the balcony on the southeast corner is significant, and you can have any number of people out there at any one time. So I'm just not comfortable with that right now as it's drawn up. So I would still need to see some kind of revision to the impact to the residents to the east. Like I said, I'm okay with the concept of relocating the units, but not as they're currently drawn up.
Okay, thank you. And I would disagree. I'm very comfortable with the design plan, and we have already approved balconies on the second story. As the applicant stated, that balcony is set back significantly, and yes, while it is a larger balcony, it's not much larger than the other 2 balconies combined. So, I mean, any number, you're right, any number of people could be out there at any one time. But I think they're necessary features. Moving it to the side of the house wouldn't really make sense to me, but I'm comfortable with the plan as submitted. I think with the landscaping and planting plan for screening on both sides of the creek, it would be beneficial to the residents. The distance between that balcony and the nearest resident is, like town planner said, is probably over 70 feet, and within that 70 feet distance there are trees and shrubs and things of that nature. And we're not talking about the south corner, we're talking about the corner closest to Champagne Drive, so the distance looks even further to me on this map. So I'm comfortable with it as submitted and incorporating the native habitat planting and screening features. I could support this. Bob?
One comment, the balcony that's under discussion, this depth here is approximately almost twice as much as these other balconies, and just a suggestion, if it might mitigate Vice Mayor Dunbar's concern regarding the size of the balcony if it were to be pulled in and not quite as big.
Yeah, it should be the same size as the balcony on the north end. I mean, they should all be the same, equally the same size. I don't understand why it has to be so large. Is that the roof of the house beneath it?
It may be where it matches or joins up with supports underneath, but they could put braces out and cantilever it in or pull it in from even that support.
It's a big balcony. I'd like to have a big balcony if it was my place, but make it the same size as the other balconies. Would you be comfortable with that? Draw it back?
Well, what I'd like to see is
Those things opening up onto the balcony.
It's a hot water heater on this side and storage on the other.
Oh.
I believe that's what that is.
If, Mayor, you asked me a question about whether that's mitigation enough, and it is it's certainly a step in the right direction. I would like to have the opportunity to ask the architect what our other options are, but we can't do that tonight anyway. I would even recommend, and I realize we're only meeting once this month, but I would recommend getting feedback from the architect about any options we might have to either reducing this balcony to a more acceptable size or repositioning it to minimize the impact. And I realize that would then cause impact to the residents of the adjacent building. So
What size would you propose?
I don't have a square footage in mind, Mayor. I do know that if you put 15, 20 people out there, it's a significant noise impact. I'm sure of that. If you put 4 people or fewer out there, it's a greatly reduced noise impact. So, and I appreciate that. And I'm not sure if you would welcome hearing again from the applicant that is here about what flexibility there is. I mean, if they're not willing to make changes, then we don't need to continue talking about it. But if they are, or if there are other options they're willing to consider, then I'd be interested in hearing that.
Is the applicant interested in speaking to the issue? I'll reopen the public hearing. You gonna make that a smaller balcony, Joan?
I'm pretty comfortable that we can. Unfortunately, without Jim Jeffries here and not being the architect myself, I can't say that for certain, but I think that our main priority is to get these units moved over to a place where we think that they would, afford a better quality of life. And I think they actually do fit better in this location than they do as two small studios on the first floor of a farmhouse. So, without knowing structurally what the impacts are and the roof line, things like that, I would think that we can, if it could be a condition of approval, that we would come back with something and mutually agree upon a smaller size. I think that would be acceptable.
I'm just going to make one observation that from the elevations, it does not appear there would be any interference to pulling that in. There's not a roof line below it. It's a patio below it. So these, wherever they are, let's go back here. Yeah, that's what's below it. It's an open patio, and they could be pulled back, the columns that are supporting this. Second, I keep going the wrong way. And by the way, that other one I identified as storage is a air conditioner.
Oh, good.
So
Comfortable with that as a condition of approval?
If I may ask, Mayor, ask if staff, are you comfortable having that condition in place that you could determine, I'm not sure how to ask this, an appropriate size? And my problem with trying to figure out what an appropriate size is because I'm talking about trying to decrease the ability to have too many people out there. And I would defer maybe to your expert opinion on how big a balcony needs to be usable, but not so large as to be able to have a significant number of people out there making noise at one
Right.
time.
Well, if you have a look here and you pull the depth of the balcony back with the water heater and this other enclosure, which the doors will now have to open inward this way, it's going to really reduce the usable area to just outside the doors and make it more in line with the size of these other balconies.
Well, you have the idea in mind that I'm going for here is to, whether it be cut it in half depth-wise, I just don't want to say cut it in half and then find out that there are some kind of logistical issues to that. But it sounds like the applicant is willing to work with you, and I would trust your judgment on the guidance that I'm asking for in order to be able to approve it as being presented. So if you're very clear on my concerns, that I'd be willing to add that condition.
Staff is clear on the concern.
All right.
Did you
I
have
was
any?
going to say, I have no problem with the balcony, I'll restate that, but I don't know why we wouldn't make it less usable, but if it seems to me that the balcony should all be the same depth, so just say that all four of them are the same depth, or whatever the largest depth of these other three is, that's the largest that will be, and just be done with it.
Somebody want to make a motion?
It's your, all right, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number,
You have the
that's not a
resolution.
resolution.
You have the resolution first, and then
Thank
you
you.
have the introduction and waiving of the
ordinance. Thank you.
first reading of the ordinance to amend the
So I was
development.
like, this is the first reading?
There it is.
Yeah, resolution number 283809, approving the master development plan amendment, et cetera, for the Yountville expansion. With the two changes to this resolution, that have a need for the developer to make privacy and landscaping adjustments to both the east and west side, including the property owners and or the residents of Mobile Home Park, to work with staff, the residents, and the developer. The second change is to amend the balcony on the apartment G to be no deeper than the largest depth of the other three balconies, and staff will work on an amenable plan that meets the council's expectations.
I'll second that then.
All in favor of the motion as amended?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Thank you. That motion carries.
I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance number 381-09, approving the amendment number 1 to the development agreement by ordinance number 367-06, also to waive the reading.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Thank you. That motion carries. Are we done? Yes. With that item? Okay. Item 13, staff informational reports. Community Center Library Project Status Report.
Again, as you may recall,
Where's
these are-
Councilmember Dutton? Yoo-hoo, Bill.
These two items are, this section of your agenda packet is for informational purposes, and unless the council has any questions, staff will not make a detailed presentation on these areas.
Good.
Can I make one quick comment?
Certainly, yes.
That was a question to you. I just want to make a statement that the community center budget, as it has been for meetings and meetings and meetings, is for all practical purposes unchanged in terms of the contingency, which is great. So we're still tracking to, we will have an under-budget project, as we said earlier, and, a lot of thanks go out for that, but we're still on that same path, and that should be mentioned.
Outstanding. Good. Congratulations to everybody on that.
I'll second that, Mayor, too. They put in a lot of hard work over the year, and I
Yep.
certainly appreciate it.
It's a beautiful project. If you haven't seen it, go take a look. Wastewater treatment plant upgrade status report. Any questions on that one? Water efficient landscape ordinance introduction. Anybody got any questions or comments on that?
No, I'll make some additional comments later because we discussed this at the WIC board.
Okay, good. Uh-oh, there it is. Item 14.
Actually, I have a few under other comments just to share briefly. One, I'd like to point out that the town of Yountville and our community pool, in partnership with the Veterans Home, were selected and featured as a profile in the December 2009 issue of ICMA's Public Management Magazine, and that's the International City County Management Association. And that's a fairly positive kudo to the town to have its pool and its operations profiled as a positive example of what a small community can do. So on behalf of our staff, and I think the council really should be proud of that acknowledgement. And again, also the partnership that we have with the Veterans Home for that unique facility. Some very late-breaking news that we're very excited to share. As of approximately 4:10 this afternoon, the town has been advised that we have received tentative approval for 2 additional MTC federal stimulus grants that staff has been working on. This comes with good and bad news. I will have Graham explain a little bit of what the projects that staff had applied for when we realized there was some excess funding in Napa County that hadn't been allocated. The bad news is I will need you to meet briefly at a second meeting in December to approve a resolution authorizing acceptance of the grants. With that, I'd like Graham to explain what the 2 projects that we submitted for that we've received tentative approval.
As you may know from the NCTPA meetings, that there is a transportation enhancement program There's about $500,000 that's been available. We did submit an application for this and were awarded. There were 4 applications, 3 were approved. The first one is to extend the bike path which now goes from Washington to Madison. It would go down Madison with a crosswalk at Highway 29, and then it would continue up to Yountville Park, then across Monroe, down Yount, and then over to Yountville Crossroad. This is a $204,000 application. It was approved. The second one is an application to do sidewalks south of the Yountville Inn down to the church in the southern limits. This would be on the east side of Washington at the south end of town. That was a $61,000 application. What we found out, even though there was a 50-page book on how to fill out the application, we also need to do a resolution with specific language from MTC that says we shall do this, that, and the other thing. So we'd like to do a staff report and a resolution to bring back during a special meeting for your approval.
Okey dokey. You want us to
Good.
pin down a date?
We'll work with you on that.
Okay, good.
It does need to be before the 16th, so 15th will be the second Tuesday of the month. I was just throwing that out there, if that's possible.
Does the 15th work for everybody?
Sure.
I have no idea.
All right, we will communicate with you.
As
and
long
work.
as it doesn't
Again,
cut into coffee.
This will be a very brief meeting just to approve the item so that we can meet the funding requirements. I will point out that this is an example where staff sat down and said there's some really good things, but you just heard a CIP project mid-report on where we're at, and these will be 2 projects we're adding to that, but we think that they're consistent and we think that they have strong benefits. So I may be doing some adaptation to a couple of the projects to justify priority and stay within staff ability for delivery of product, but these are very consistent with the council's priorities to improve pedestrian access and make things safe, and getting a connection all the way to the Catholic Church on the south end, I think, is really important. And then continuing to work on the focus for the bike trail and our partnership with the Vine Trail, I think, is a very good outcome, especially since we've been successful with the $1 million for the bicycle trail bypass.
If I may ask a question, is there any way to tie in that gravel lot? You're talking about only on the east side of the street?
Correct.
So is there any way to include the west side in that project? Or
I'm going to practice what you guys asked me earlier. No.
Thank you for that succinct clarification.
I would just like to thank you for digging in and going and getting it. Obviously, you had a little more get-go than some of the other jurisdictions, so these are just little things that we can do for our town that hopefully the citizens appreciate it, and when they see that done and realize that that's newfound money.
Are there any other staff reports or comments?
No.
All righty. Council member meetings, reports, and comments. Flood control did meet today, and we had to pass several resolutions of necessity and take some property, so that wasn't fun, but we did it, and there wasn't any controversy or issue or any opposition, so we're getting the job done. That was for the Napa Creek Flood Control Project. NCTPA?
NCTPA had a very short agenda at the last meeting. The only substantive item that was discussed, most of which was discussed in closed session, but the one piece of information that's public is that the NCTPA just did a RFP for transit services in the county. The losing bidder has appealed that twice, lost both times, and has now filed papers in court to try to force a new bidding process. So that's, I think everybody expected that. So that's the one thing that is still lingering on about that. And then we have a meeting in next week.
Mm-hmm.
So
16th.
not a lot going on.
Other than that. Wick?
The WIC board met last Thursday and had a long meeting. There was a lot of information. First, I'm sure everybody read their 3 MB file that we got on item 9C for all the emergency mitigations that we're putting in place. And you can see that there's a lot of things going on in terms of flooding, which has a lot of input from the people who work for WIC and the WIC board. One is what's called the Rutherford dust restoration. So that's when they go along the creek and we're making sure that the creek is not just healthy for the fish, but mostly for our flooding, getting rid of a lot of issues with that. And that's now been complete from Rutherford down to Oak Knoll, and then it's going to continue further south. But before they do that, they're starting now on the Zinfandel Bridge project. You might know that old bridge on Zinfandel Lane. It's, I think it's going to be 100 years old next year and a half. So they're trying to get it finished so they can have the bridge party. But there's just some small holes, and it kind of runs off into a big cliff. So they're going to widen those holes and smooth those drop-offs off so the fish don't, I guess, just fall or something, and they can get more water through. That was kind of the main gist of it. Also, there was a lot of discussion about the new water ordinance going in, and I have some more information, and I know Bob put it in his staff report, but there's some other kind of minor things that we will consider in detail when we look at following either the state ordinance or the WELO. So I think that there's some things in the WELO that are good, but some that if we adopt it as a whole are just kind of crazy myself, but we'll look at that later. We talked about that quite a bit. And they wanted me to announce that on December 14th, if you're interested, contact the WIC board. The Christmas Audubon bird count will be coming up. So it's going to be all day. So if you're interested, this is where our region kind of gets out and counts the birds and put all the numbers together. And then they also gave us 2 more Hopper Creek signs. You might have seen some of those brown Hopper Creek signs popping up, and Steve's got 6 more coming after that, and then all of our Hopper Creek signs will be in place around town. And then just one other comment I wanted to bring to everyone's attention. Now that the community center is open, people are probably seeing that Bartisono path. It's kind of covered in weeds on either side. You know, you have the nice Bartisono Inn, the nice community hall, then this path. You know, this is kind of covered with weeds on either side. I'm not sure if we just have easement for the path, who's responsible for landscaping on either side of that. One's a bioswale, supposedly, but somebody, I think at the Bartisono, is just piling a bunch of twigs in there, so nothing's swaling at all in there, I don't think, anymore. So, and also on the east side of that walking bridge that goes over Hopper Creek, there's a big patch of decomposed granite that I think should have been concreted in, and some of the older ADA accessible people are getting stuck in that DG as they're trying to get across the bridge, so we might want to look into that. And just a thought, next year when we're putting all of our CIP plans in place, I think it's a little bit of low voltage lighting along that path, since it's going to be, people are going to be taking a lot more. It's going to be part of the art walk, and it's, you know, going to the community hall. When it gets dark, you can't see what's going on there. So that's it.
Thank you. Any other reports or comments? Councilmember Dutton?
I think there was a number of public events that happened. I'll just mention one, because I'm sure somebody's going to mention the others. But I did talk to Barbara Delinsky, obviously, for the Thanksgiving Day dinner, and she reported the biggest year they've ever had, 450 people they served. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to help this year. I went to the families this time, but I wish I could have. But everybody said it was really successful, and I know everybody pitched in. And, you know, once again, that's just a great thing that this town can do. Okay. And just one other, I think Councilmember Moeller mentioned about the pass. You know, time does fly. And I think next week we'll celebrate the 1-year anniversary of the probably most beautiful walking path in town being closed behind Hopper Creek.
Any more comments?
Got a quick one. I just want to make a statement. I missed the first 45 minutes of this meeting. I'm part of a group that's working to work with the school district to protect and save Yountville School right next door. There was a PTA meeting scheduled, of course, for tonight at 6 o'clock to deal with that subject, so I felt like I needed to be there. But I would say there was 75 people over there, which is, again, I think it's been pretty clear to me in the last couple of weeks how much this community values that school. I have one child and soon to be two who will go there. So there's a lot of work going on that. If you're interested in being actively involved in that effort, we're looking for not just parents. We really want to get the whole community, and I'm sure I'll come back and ask the council for some things as well. But we're working on that and trying to get answers and trying to understand really what we need to do. Because that's the hard part, is it's a bit unclear, and I don't think the district even knows of what's the situation as the budget crisis drags on and on and on in the state. But we're putting together a strategy and an action plan to protect that school, because that's, as we all know, a vital part of this community. So thank you.
Good. Thank you for your comments. Anything, Vice Mayor?
Yes, I'll just add one thing to my very brief list, and that's to Council Member Chilton's point. Both Councilmember Dutton and I were at the school board's public outreach a couple weeks ago, and I think it is important that we are there as not only town representatives but non-parents, because neither of us have children in school there. But the intent was to really show a community-wide support for Yountville Elementary, and it is a unique situation we have here. As being a small community, it's our only option for local education. I was very impressed with the approach the parents are taking, and I'm sure at the PTA meeting it continued, that they're not just saying, please save our school. They're really giving legitimate reasons to the board, realizing it's all going to come down to budget constraints, but giving them realistic options and having an intelligent dialogue, I think, is going to be critical. Just going to my notes real quickly, I'll leave the ribbon cutting to the mayor, but the Festival of Lights that we just enjoyed last Friday was, even with the cleansing rain that we had, was really another beautiful town event put on by the Chamber of Commerce. And if anybody's been out since the sun's gone down the last few days, it is a kind of a magical landscape that we have here in town. So get out and enjoy that. Also, December 11th, we're not done having parties over at the community center. The living Christmas tree lighting, and the more public open house of the community center and library is going to take place. And one of the nice additions that we're going to present there is a new local art exhibit. We've been gathering the arts subcommittee has been gathering local art and artists to put on display, and we're going to have a whole series coming up. But that'll be another new fun addition with some of our really talented local artists. So another reason to come by the new community center. So with that, if you wanted to review the big day.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. Yeah, we did celebrate it. We have a milestone celebration this week, and it was, or last week. God, it seems like a long time ago. Our ribbon cutting for our new community center, and it was really exciting. I know, Arnold, you were here. You saw the facility. I don't know if the rest of your family and friends and co-counsel saw it, but it is a spectacular facility, and we're very, very proud of it and very excited to get it up fully running and functioning for the community, and everyone all over the valley is talking about it. So, and be excited to learn of its eventual certification in terms of its LEEDs standard. We're really looking forward to that, but it was an exciting event. We had a lot of special guests attend, and nothing but wows coming from everyone. So we were really proud of that. And then Vice Mayor touched on the Festival of Lights. It is beautiful. If you haven't been here in the evening, you got to go up Washington Street, up and down, up and down. I'm just driving around burning up gas, and But no, it's really, really pretty, and the company that does that lighting job for us did a great job. I'd like to thank All That Glows. And Bill mentioned the Thanksgiving dinner, and I just wanted to mention the fact that the Vintage Estate Group, their chef and culinary team, prepared that meal and donated all that to the community. So we're very, very grateful and very pleased that their community involvement is what it is. And we're lucky to have them and everyone else who steps up and volunteers and helps out. So with that, I don't think I have any more comments. This is our last meeting for the month of December.
That's actually not correct. You'll
I
be
know,
having-
I was going to go there. Give me a break. We're going to have a brief special meeting to approve the grant funding that was obtained through MTC, but we won't have a regular agenda. And it is public. It is open. Will be open to the public for comment. But future agenda items, we're going to be addressing our 6-month progress report regarding the town council's goals and objectives for this year and into next fiscal year. And we will have our comprehensive annual financial report, our CAFR, by Mr. Terry Krieg, our CPA. So we will set that date and make it known, and we adjourn to the next meeting. The next regular council meeting will be Tuesday, January 5th. However, a special meeting will take place between now and then. Date to be determined. My favorite item, item 16.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None? Opposed? Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.